Hey guys, how's it going? Brian here. We're back in the garage, and today we are working on my brother-in-law Chase's Jeep. This is going to be a 2019 JL. We got a bunch of stuff to put on, so let's take a look. Alright, so we're going to be doing a lot on this Jeep today. If you guys go ahead and take a look, we got new HD steering from Synergy, and then we've got some new skid plates from Artec, and then we got some new diff covers from Motobilt, and then we're also going to do the same sector shaft track bar brace that I have from Synergy. And then we're also going to do the rear track bar brace. This is pretty neat. I want to check that out. So let's go ahead and we'll dive into it. Alright guys, so the first thing we're going to throw on is going to be the FAD skid cover. And then we're going to do the skid plates for the rear shocks and lower control arms. This front one's pretty easy. Just got to take out the couple 10mm from the factory. And then they provide some flat Allen keyed ones. So this is going to be a 3/16 Allen key. So let's go ahead and we'll get that thrown on. Alright, so now we're going to go ahead and pull the 10mm. There's 4 of them, 2 down low here and 2 up on the top. Let's go ahead and get those off. Alright, now that you have the factory plate off, you're going to go ahead and bring your Artec plate. It's going to come up just like so. Alright, so you got to be kind of careful, kind of shoehorn this side in. It does fit, it's just nice and snug. So you reuse your factory 10mm bolts up here on the top corners, and then you'll use those flush mounted Allen key or Allen head bolts there. Alright, so after you get those good and tight, you are all set. So let's go ahead and take a closer look at this skid plate. Alright guys, that's what she looks like on there. Got a nice coating on it. It's got some nice drain holes. And it protects that plug pretty good in the back too, which is pretty nice. Nice quick install. Offers quite a bit more protection than the factory one. Alright, so now we're going to go ahead and install the Artec rear lower controller arm skids and then the shock mount. So this is going to give extra protection to the bottom of that control arm and then where the shock mounts. So this will kind of come and go right here and kind of protect that whole underside there. So in order to remove that, you got to pull the shock, that's an 18mm. And then you got to pull the lower control arm, that's going to be a 21mm on this side. We're going to leave the wheels on, so I'm going to use a breaker bar with the 21 on the outside here. Then another thing I did for when I'm doing this control arm, you make sure you want to cock the wheels so you're not sliding. And then I also put the jack up under the pinion. This will keep the axle from rotating when you drop that lower control arm. Alright, now that you got that control arm bolt out, go ahead and you want to remove that lower shock bolt. That's going to be that 18mm again for you. Just like so. Alright, so now that that's off, this is just going to kind of go over it like so. I'm going to clean this up real quick and then we'll put this on. Alright, so another thing you want to do with the lower control arm bolts and the lower shock bolt is you want to go ahead and throw some blue Loctite on there. That'll just make sure that that retains torque and doesn't come loose on you at all. Alright, so now you got that all cleaned up, you go ahead and take your brace. You're going to just slide that right over the top here. And it lines right up. So another thing you can do with this bolt is you can just get in there with a little flathead, put a little pressure up on the shock so you're not binding. You can slide that right in. Now if you look at the factory one over here, they have the bolts sticking to the inside. You can actually get that hung up on rocks. So for reinstall, I'm going to flip it the other way just so it's got some clearance. Alright guys, so we're going to go ahead and torque this up now we got it together. This looks pretty cool. It gives you quite a bit of protection underneath here so you're not smashing up your joints, and it also protects the shock mount here. So you're going to want to torque this guy up to 90 foot-pounds, and then it's going to be 74 on the lower shock mount. So we're gonna go ahead and do that and then throw the other one on, and we'll show you guys what that looks like at the end. Alright guys, so that's going to do it for this install of the Artec rear control arm skid plates. It was really easy to install. You just want to make sure you go ahead and put your jack under the pinion and then put a little screwdriver in here, so that way your shock doesn't fully open up and you can't line it back up. So if you do it that way, it lines up real nice. The bolts are just long enough on the lower control arm here. You have your threads just poking out there. So you're good there, and then we went ahead and flipped this bolt inwards so we don't hang up on there. But this will add extra protection and should be a good modification. Alright, thanks guys. Alright guys, so on the rear we're going to go ahead and throw the Synergy rear track bar brace on. This guy's pretty hefty. This is going to go ahead and reinforce the upper frame side of the track bar mount. So we're going to throw that on. Alright, so to do this you're going to need a few tools. You're going to need 21mm, 22mm, and you're going to need an 18 and a 15. The 18 is going to be for the support bolt here. The 22 is going to be for the new track bar bolt. The old one's a 21, so you need that. And then you're going to need a 15mm with an extension to go ahead and remove your rear sway bar mounts. So that new sway bar bolts are going to go through here, and then they're also going to go through this plate to kind of match the thickness. So this is going to tie in pretty well to the frame, that sway bar mount, and then reinforce your track bar brace. So let's go ahead and throw that on. Alright, so now now that we got the track bar bolt out, we're gonna go ahead and pull the 15mm sway bar link. We're gonna do that on both sides because the brace is gonna tie in here, and then we got the spacer for the other side. Alright, now that you got the sway bar out of the way and the track bar, you can go ahead and bring your brace up. It's going to go like this. Slide over the existing bracket. And then to hold it in place, we're going to use that 18mm bolt. And that kind of comes through an existing hole in the frame and out the top here. So you can go ahead and loosely fit that, and then we'll kind of mock everything else up here. So now that you got that 18mm through the frame there with your washers and your stover, I'm throwing some blue Loctite on these. They had a bunch from the factory, so I'm going to use that again. And then you want to go ahead and line up your sway bar link bolts here and get those started. I'm going to throw that in there to kind of retain everything while we tighten everything up. And then we'll go ahead and pull that out and put the track bar in when we're all done. So you want to go ahead and start these by hand. They are kind of hard to thread in. They did Loctite the crap out of these. So you want to get them threaded in good by hand, and then we'll run them in with the impact. I'm going to leave this semi-loose. We're going to go ahead and put that spacer plate in on the other side. Then we can come in and do our final torques on these. Alright, so here's that spacer plate that's going to go on the driver's side. And what this does is it just matches your sway bar up so it stays parallel with the other side, since you did install that thicker plate there. So we'll just go ahead and we'll get these guys tightened up here, and then we'll go torque that track bar back on. Alright guys, so now we're going to torque the 15mm bolts for the sway bar brackets to 35 foot-pounds, and then we'll move up to the frame side bracket there. Perfect. Alright, so now we're going to come in here, we're going to do this frame side bracket bolt. This one's going to be 60 foot-pounds, so we'll torque that down. That's going to be your 18mm, and it's got the stover on there. And then we're going to go ahead and do the 22mm to 110 foot-pounds once we get the sway bar back in there. Alright, so we went ahead and I had Chase rock the body a little so we can line this bolt up. All you got to do is push it over a little bit and it'll line this right back up. So now that we got this torqued to 60, we're going to go ahead and throw this new track bar bolt in. And this is going to be the 22mm. And this one's got the stover. We already put some blue Loctite on there. So this one gets torqued to 110 foot-pounds. And after that, we're all done. We'll kind of show you what it looks like here in a second. Alright guys, so this is the new bracket. It was super easy to install. You just got to drop the sway bar link brackets here. And then this hole for this upper bolt's already there in the frame, so that's easy. So all you got to do is loosen the track bar up, drop it down. And this does add quite a bit of support. It's kind of braced over here to that bracket, so it's bolted here, here, and then here again. So this is going to give us quite a bit of stability over the factory and should make the roll feel a lot better. So a quick, easy mod, but definitely worth it. I might look into doing this this and the skids on my Jeep as well. I'm pretty impressed with this stuff. So let's go ahead and we'll work on the front now. Hey guys, Brian here. We're back in the garage for day 2 of working on the brother-in-law's Jeep. So today we're going to be doing the front end. We're going to be doing the Synergy steering, the drag link and tie rod, and we're also going to be adding the track bar and sector shaft brace. So let's go ahead and get started. Alright guys, so just like we did on my Jeep, we're going to be doing that sector shaft brace. We're going to start with that and then move to the steering. So this will be exactly the same as on the other one, so we'll go ahead and go over it briefly. You get all your hardware. They do provide 2 things of red Loctite, which is good. And then this is going to be that new nut for the pitman arm, and then the brace for it. They do provide instructions, which is nice. Let's go ahead and get this on the Jeep. Alright, so in order to make way for this brace, we do have to disconnect his Rubicon sway bar, so we're going to have to disconnect it at the axle on both sides, and then we should be able to swing it down. Then we're going to remove the track bar. That's going to be a 21 millimeter. These ones are 18. And then we'll get to these 4 18 millimeter bolts that are holding on the steering box brace. But before we do that, we'll want to take that big nut off the pitman arm. So let's go ahead and do that. All right, so now you want to pull that track bar bolt out so we can swing the track bar out of the way to get to that big nut. It's going to be a 21 mil. The replacement track bar bolt's going to be a 22. So make sure you got all the parts you need before you start. Alright guys, so now the next thing to do while the box is still connected to the frame is loosen this large 42 millimeter nut. You'll need this giant socket and the adapter because this is a 3/4 drive. I did go ahead and already break it loose. I'm going to start unscrewing it. Mine did kind of come loose fairly easy. This one was a lot looser than mine. We'll go ahead and see if we can thread it the rest of the way off by hand. If not, we'll throw the impact on there. So let's go ahead and do that. Alright guys, so we're going to go ahead and pull the rest of this nut off here on the pitman arm. This one on his Jeep was a lot looser than mine. We didn't have to use heat or cheater bar or anything. So this one only took us about 5 minutes and we got it almost all the way off. So it all depends, you know, some will be hard, some will be easy. I don't think he had as much Loctite on as I did, but it's pretty easy. Let's go ahead and pull that off and we'll get the Synergy one on. Alright, so this is the new Synergy pitman arm nut. As you can see, it's got a collar to it, so that that brace can slide up on this. What we're going to do is we're going to use a bunch of the red Loctite they provided and go ahead and get this torqued up to spec. Right, so we went ahead and torqued that pitman arm nut, Synergies, to 184 foot-pounds. We did put quite a bit of that red Loctite on there, so that's not going anywhere. So let's go ahead and we'll pull the steering box and get that brace on. Alright, so you want to come in here now that you got that nut on and take these 4 18 millimeter bolts out. This is what's holding the steering box to the frame. So the steering box will drop a little, but it's connected to everything else, so you don't have to worry about it. We'll just pull these guys out, and then we'll get our brace on. So now that we got those bolts out, you can go ahead and take your Synergy bracket like so, and this just slides right over the existing track bar bracket, and then lines right up there. So let's go ahead and we'll put a couple screws in loose, and then we'll put these little ones in here that they want first. Alright guys, so now it's time to go ahead and slide the collared part on here onto the nut. This is what's going to retain your pitman arm and kind of give that sector shaft its bracing. So we'll go ahead, this slides on that new nut, and then we'll go ahead and bolt it in. We do have a few of the other bolts already started. We'll go through and torque all these, and then we should be done. Alright, so now that we got everything loosely fitted, we're going to go through and tighten everything. So they want you to start with this bolt here. It's going to be 60 foot-pounds. It's 19 mil. This one's going to be 60 foot-pounds. That's the Allen key one. That's going to be a 1/4 inch Allen, and that's 60 as well. And then they want you to come up here and do the steering box bolts. These are 99. And then you'll come in here and you'll do these bolts on the brace, and those are 30. So we'll go ahead and we'll tighten this up, and then we can throw the track bar back in. Alright guys, so we went ahead and installed the Synergy track bar brace and sector shaft brace. We went ahead and put a couple squirts of grease in there, turned it back and forth, and we paint marked everything so we can keep track of torque. So now we're going to go ahead and throw the steering on. We're going to start with the drag link. So that 21 millimeter, we got to get that off. We might have to pickle fork that to get it off, and then we'll take it off down at the knuckle over there. So it's best to turn the wheel all the way locked to the left. You get a lot more room here. You'll have to use an open wrench. Can't get a socket in there. So we'll go ahead and do that. Alright guys, so we finally got the nut off the tie rod end at the pitman arm. We did have to use the heat gun, and we did have to use a pretty big sledgehammer and a pickle fork. But as you can see, we got it off. You want to leave the nut on there so it doesn't drop to the floor. we're gonna head around the other side and pull this drag link off. So again, on this side, it's gonna be the 21 millimeter again. Let's go ahead and zip this guy out. Yeah, and this one just dropped right out, thankfully. So let's go ahead, we'll pull this out, we'll get some measurements, and we'll get the synergy one in. All right, so now that we got these tie rods all loose, we gotta pull the steering stabilizer. That's gonna be an 18 millimeter. That is connected to the tie rod here. So we gotta go ahead and detach that. We are replacing that with the over the top of the tie rod setup from Synergy as well. So we'll need to take that off. And then we should be able to just drop this all out. We'll get our measurements and we'll get the new stuff in. Tie rod out here, we'll get it measured up and we'll pull that drag link as well. And these ones fall right out of there. You don't really need to fight them like you had to do on the Pitman arm side. So we'll pull out the stock tie rod and we'll compare it to the Synergy one. Alright, so we do have the drag link out. We went ahead and measured his factory one, and it's 41 5/8. So we went ahead and we set up the Synergy to 41 5/8. I did put a little more anti-seize on there to make this easier to adjust down the road. And then also another thing to note, you don't want this end more than 3.5 inches out to center the tie rod from the collar here. And then this end, it's 3 inches to center of the tie rod end. You don't want to exceed that. We're underneath that, so we're good, and we're at 41 5/8. So we're gonna go ahead and we'll get this up in the vehicle and get it mocked up. And then later on, we can adjust on the vehicle with this collar if we need to bring it in or out to straighten out that steering wheel. So let's go ahead and we'll snug these down a little bit with pinch bolts, and then we'll get it up in the vehicle. All right, guys, now that we got this in here and snugged up on the pinch bolts, these guys are going to be torqued to 90 foot-pounds, and then these ones are going to be 55. You'll then want to put a cotter pin in there. If your cotter pin hole doesn't quite line up, you always want to tighten it a little bit and then put the cotter pin in. You never want to loosen it. So let's go ahead, we're going to tighten these up to 90 and then we'll torque these to 55. You do want to make sure you've got the bend forward and nice and straight when you install that, so it's not flopping around. We've already snugged it up so it's nice and tight and looks pretty in line there. So let's go ahead and we'll get that on, then we'll do the tie rod. All right, guys, so now that we got the drag link and tie rod on there, we're gonna go ahead and drill out the factory stabilizer to 1/2 inch. That'll accommodate the new track bar bolt that'll connect to this end of the stabilizer, and then we also have a new clamp for on the tie rod. So we'll go ahead and drill these guys out so it fits in those, and then we can go ahead and flip that onto the top of the tie rod. So now that we have the drag link and the tie rod on, we drove around a bit and we straightened out the steering wheel. We got it about as close as we can just doing this. We'll take it in and get it alignment. And then we went ahead and made the tie rod the same length as the one that we pulled off. It was towed out a little bit, so we had to tow it back in about 1/2 inch. The tires are a lot happier now. So last thing we have to do is put this steering relocation setup on. So it replaces your track bar bolt. The shock will go here. We already drilled those out to 1/2 inch. And then the other end will go here. And this clamps above the tie rod. So it'll move the shock from below the tie rod to up above, which will get it out of the way of rocks and whatnot. So now what we gotta do real quick is pull that 21 millimeter track bar bolt out and swap it out for this guy. All right, guys, so now that we got the new track bar bolt in, that does have this stud that mounts to the factory shock, or the aftermarket one if you get it, you want to go ahead and put your clamp style distal end one here. And what you're going to do is you're going to put the side with the shock boot right up here. All right, guys, so now that you have that new track bar bolt on here, you can go ahead and mount your steering stabilizer. We're reusing the factory one, so we drilled this out to 1/2 inch, and then that goes on here with this little button head bolt. That's going to be 20 foot-pounds once you get that torqued. I'm going to leave it loose for now. Now this end down here is going to connect to the collar end, and you want it to go in the hole closest to it that the bolt threads in. So what we'll do is you want to leave this loose, and then you'll mount this up. What you'll do is you'll turn your steering wheel full lock, and then you'll push this all the way in and then back out 1/4 inch, and then that way you're not bottoming out the shock every time you turn. So we'll get that there, and then we'll tighten these guys down. So the button head one's going to be 3/16. Yep, and then you're going to want a 7/32 for this guy. So let's go ahead and we'll get that all buttoned up. This one's going to be a 19 millimeter as well. So we'll get that attached and we'll turn the wheel and we'll lock this in. Alright guys, so that's going to do it for this install. So this is going to be torqued to 70, this one's 20, and then these guys, all 6 of them are going to be 15. You just want to get them nice and snug. Like I said, you want to run this to lock, push it all the way in, and then bring it back a 1/4 inch, and then that's where you want to mark this. And you always want to check that when you turn it full lock to lock when you're done, that you're not messing up your shock or ripping bolts out. That's on there really good now. This is going to be the drag link and the tie rod setup. Looks pretty nice. We are going to be doing the same setup on mine, so we'll go over that more when I do that as well. Alright guys, so we're on to our last project on his Jeep. What we're going to do is some diff covers. These are the Motobilt ones. What he did is he went ahead and put clear coat on it so you can get that metal look, but you also get the protection without the rust. So it looks pretty cool. This one's for the front, that's for the 44 rear, and then he's also got the protector plate there that we painted for the rear locker harness. So that'll keep that from getting damaged too. So let's go ahead and throw these guys on. So it's always good to take this off first, in case this is fused on. You don't want to drain that and then not be able to fill it. Alright guys, we're going to go ahead and throw on the new Motobilt cover. You want to make sure that you line up your gasket for your diff cover on there. We reused the Mopar one. Those are rubber and reusable, just like on my video. And then on these, this uses little 12.8 millimeters. So you can use those. We're trying to get away with 11/32. That seems to be working. So you want to snug these all up, and then we'll torque these down to about 25 to 30 foot-pounds. And then same with the bottom bolt, and then we'll go ahead and get her filled. This one's going to take 2 quarts in the front, same with the rear for the 44s. So let's go ahead and we'll bolt this up, and then we'll head on to the rear. Okay guys, that's going to do it for all the installs on his Rubicon. I think they all turned out great. I am pretty excited about the skid plates he did on the lower control arms and that synergy stuff he installed as well. I might go ahead and add that to my Jeep. Alright guys, don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll see you on the next one.